Hello, my name is Isaac Kapsner, and today I will be talking about the project I conducted over the semester, which was repainting a room. So for the general schedule of this presentation, first we will discuss the project scope and what we were looking at for the project itself. Then we'll talk about the four important milestones that were laid out. Then we'll briefly discuss the workers that I have at my disposal, and then kind of looking into the project more in-depthly, we'll talk about each of the milestones, the process it took to get there, and any important things that came up. Afterwards, we'll talk about the outcome and how the project wrapped up, and then finally end with the lessons learned from the project. So, the project scope was primarily a client wished for her current office room to be repainted, as it was up to personal preference. She requested help from myself and others to achieve this goal. The important kind of restrictions were that the color of the painting needed to be picked by the client, and she would quality check after the room was painted to make sure it was up to her standards. And then the last big restriction was that it needed to the painting of the room specifically needed to be completed over a weekend when her office was not in use. So we were kind of restricted to that kind of 2-day time frame when she wasn't using it for work. As for the milestones we managed to plan out, the first big milestone was having acquired any materials we needed for the project. This would be paint, brushes, canvas, painter's tape, other things like that. The second major milestone was completing all the prep work for the room. That would be moving out all of her equipment so we don't get paint on it, putting down canvas so we don't get any on the carpet, putting the painter's tape down, etc. The third major milestone was having the room fully painted, having any spot checks completed, and making sure the paint is dry. And the final milestone that will kind of mark the end of the project was having a quality check by the client, having the workers be present to fix any mistakes or requests, and finally closing out the project. So, we had 4 workers available, and it starts with Catherine K. She was the client and primary stakeholder, and she would be involved by selecting paint color and doing the quality check. Second was John K. He is the project sponsor. Then Christy K. was also a project sponsor, but as well as one of the painters. And then I myself am the project manager as well as one of the painters. So, how the project proceeded. The first milestone, if you remember, was acquiring all the supplies. In reaching the first milestone, no major problems or delays occurred. In fact, honestly, the opposite. The client had known beforehand which color paint she would request, and due to the project sponsor's recommendations, we got an extra can of paint than we think we needed, just for emergencies. And the status as of the milestone, we were on schedule, on budget, and even had a small surplus of supplies. The second milestone was most of the work was done within schedule, but there were a few hiccups. If you remember, milestone 2 was getting the room all prepped and ready. Due to the vents in the room that was responsible for heating and air conditioning, we needed to kind of quickly adapt, and some weights were needed to keep the canvases flat and stable. In addition, the painter's tape we acquired was very thin width-wise, and there were some small concerns that the window and door frames would get some paint on them, so we kind of had to double layer painter's tape, which was fine, but it meant that we were slightly behind schedule. Well, we're still on budget, but there are some slight concerns moving into the third kind of stretch. On the third milestone, the process was pretty simple. This was having the room fully painted, in which we saw great success. Weather resulted in a longer than normal time to dry, since we could not open up many windows. After the initial run-through, multiple spots were unpainted or had some minor problems with drying in a weird way. Thankfully, the purchasing of some smaller brushes were able to deal with the situation, thanks to our kind of foresight at the first milestone. And so, status as of milestone, we got back on schedule, and we were still on budget. Now, I'm going to talk about the outcome, which also kind of mixes in with the fourth milestone. After completion, we did all the spot checks, everything like that. We called the client in to do a quality check of the room as a whole. As you can see there's a picture of kind of the finished painted room. She was quite satisfied with the work and fully approved the completion of the project. So we just started to do some wrap-up stuff. Extra supplies were placed in a small storage area for possible future use, and one last meeting took place after this quality check to discuss any lessons learned and any other important topics of conversation. So the lessons learned. I mainly structured it in a do again and don't do again. So for the do agains, on the left, we can see that some simple lessons were like purchasing extra supplies in case of a problem, if there's room in the budget, having a buffer for setting up and tearing down time-wise, having detergent and like other cleaning stuff prepped for getting paint on clothes or the carpet or other things like that, having a quality check so that we can ensure we're meeting client standards, and then this is kind of more of a client-sided thing, being able to choose the paint before going to buy it so that we know what we're looking for. And then for the more negative lessons learned, the lessons learned from more negative experiences, having wider painter's tape for door and windows frames, having more hands for a larger room, having weights for the canvas on the floor to keep it down, having eye protection or disposable glasses, because there was one moment when some paint got in someone's eye, and then also having a second ladder if more than 2 workers are present, to make sure that we can keep things moving and get those higher up places while still making progress. Thank you all for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.